And there we go. We're live on YouTube. There we go. We're just waiting for Myron to jump on, and then we're going to continue this tea time, and we're going to have some fun with all of you guys today. There we go. Do. Just going to take a few seconds to wait for Myron to jump on, and then we're going to get started and we're going to continue. So I'm not going to do the opening. I'm not going to do a disclaimer. That was all done on StreamYard. So we will just jump into the conversation. So bring your questions and all that good stuff. We're just waiting for Myron to jump in here, and then we will have a good strong cup of tea with all of you guys today on Tea Time. We're just going to wait and see what's going on here. So if everybody would like to just leave some comments in the section, we are live. So we're just gonna there we go. We're just waiting here. There we go.
Oh yeah, I'm back.
So can you hear me, Myron?
Right, I'm on. Yeah, is that all right?
There we go. I think everything is working. You can hear me?
Yeah. I can hear you playing.
There we go. We got it going again. We should have
Yeah.
just came on Zoom right from the get-go.
I think this is actually a better system for me. Zoom.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, welcome back to the show. So I'm not going to do the opening, what I did on the other platform. Everybody knows, all my listeners know, so they're all ready to go, and we're ready to have a good conversation. So welcome back to the show, Myron.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you again, Liz.
So Myron, for my audience who hasn't seen you before on the last tea time, tell us a little bit of who Myron was as a little guy and who Myron is now.
Um, oh God, where did it? Do you mean right from the very beginning, or where the
Yeah,
mystery?
when you were a little guy, who were you as a little guy?
Ah, I think I think the comedy started me off. Yeah, because in many ways, um, the comedy, as far as I was concerned, was a stepping stone, and then that led into the copywriting, um, and then our lives changed because we're on this island now in Cyprus. So that, in many ways, was the catalyst for a life-changing event. You know, I mean, in between all that, I did things like, well, first of all, I was in the travel industry for 30 years. So, from that perspective, I was writing brochures, I was doing things like that creatively. So I've always been creative, but the books was completely out of the blue. The whole thing came out of the blue. Um,
Oh,
I'd never written a book before, and that particular um, I don't know, I suppose epiphany moment came when we went to Aphrodite's Rock. Now, I mean, I've told the story so many bloody times that I'm sure people got bored with it, but basically that was the start of the whole creative writing books and things. Now I've actually practiced more with writing articles. So writing articles, I get from the publisher and from the publicity guy um, subjects, and it's taught me a bit about how I can implement those subjects into normal writing. So from that perspective, it's helped me, you know. But my books are fantasy, fiction, facts. I think that if I put them all together, I mean, it all came about simply because of um, the discovery I made when I went to Aphrodite's Rock, um, and the actual, if you like, legends that sprung up from Aphrodite's Rock, where there are, you know, tourists and all those kind of people who come into Aphrodite's Rock. But I'll be honest with you, there's not much there. There are three rocks, and one is a big rock, and there are two smaller rocks. But apart from that, there is not really a very good, shall we say, um, recognition of that. And in some ways, that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to actually move her forward, although she is seen all over the island in different images. I was trying to move her forward. If I could have got, say, for example, a movie which we were working on at one time until we did all the finances were all, shall we say, taken away due to the financial crisis. But apart from that, I, well, I keep saying we. I suppose we starts from me and Nikki when we first went to Aphrodite's Rock. But I got the idea that she was something special and that she was not being recognized. Now, my epiphany moment, as I told you, was I went into the restaurant, and the restaurant there is at the top of the hill where you overlook the rocks. So you can see a very good spectacle of what it looks like from the air, sort of, well, from up top. Anyway, I got into the got into the restaurant, looked around. There are all the normal sort of souvenirs, and there was one thing that for me a poster on the wall that has haunted me ever since, because the poster on the wall showed a female figure underneath the water, and that was my click. And my click came in, and I decided I would like to write something about this particular image. But that wasn't possible until we all moved over here in Cyprus, because you need background, you need information, and coming to Cyprus was a new life for us as well. But it gave me the opportunity to study Cyprus in different ways, all the myths, all the legends, all of that I did the research for and learned about Greek myths and everything else. And that's really where it all began. It began from a visit to a discovery to let's sit down and write this. And all I did was write one book, which I gave to my missus for Christmas. She read it, liked it. Other people picked it up and read it and said, "Why don't you go and get it published?" So I went to a guy up in Nicosia, the capital. Um, I first of all I sent him an email saying, "Would you be interested in the story?" And he's rung back, and he said, "Yeah, I would be interested. Um, what are your movements like? Can you come up on Monday?" This was on the Thursday. So I went up to Nicosia on the Thursday, having sent him the manuscript so he could read it over the weekend. And that's what happened. He read it over the weekend, said, "I love the story. It's really good. I think it could do well for Cyprus." And I said, "Yeah, that was my idea as well, was to actually bring more tourism and things like that into the island." And that's where it all began as far as publishing and things like that was concerned. But always along the lines, when you make your mind up to do something and something gets in the way, and what got in the way was finance, because we were going to make a movie. I'd been contacted by someone who was interested in us making a movie. So yeah, I mean, that's how it all began. But the biggest catalyst was all the money we had invested, and that included the publisher. Um, we lost all of it because the Greece and Cyprus were involved in the biggest financial crash of the 20th century, or 21st century, I should say. And that meant that everything was pulled. Everything, with the whole thing was pulled. Um, the publisher went bust. The guys who were interested in making the movie pulled out. Some of the people that I used said, "Well, I'm not going to go through with anything because it's not worth it as far as that goes." So yeah, I was left with the dilemma of where do I go now. Um, I had to wait till the contract I had with the first publisher run out, and then when it ran out, I had already started book two because I thought I might as well do something work constructive while I was waiting. So I went to a couple of places, and then I found James was on the James Hill of Rockhill Publishing. He was a contact that I'd been given. So I wrote to him and said to him, "This is the story," and he said, "Well, I'd be interested in publishing it." So he basically then took on the mantle of publisher and marketeer as well. And that's where we started. We started James. He was publishing it. The only problem is, Liz, that I live on an island in Cyprus. He lives in America. Now, the postage between America and Cyprus is cruel. That's the only word I can use. So you can imagine my only way of publicizing the books and the series of books was to work with people like you and other podcasters to give me an audience, so that I can say to people, look, the books are all um, on my website. And if you go to my website, myronedwards.books.com, you'll see all the different locations where you can buy the books. And there's no greater feeling of satisfaction than when somebody buys your book. It's really good. And as a writer, which I suppose I am now, having published 3 books, it means that somebody appreciates your efforts.
Absolutely.
If for example, you get I have on my website a place where people can leave comments. I've got about 1,000 comments so far, and it's like a little guest book. So they can go to the thing, they can see all the different things. They can also see a YouTube video about the image that I saw. Um, well, very similar to the image that I saw, and they can participate in the website as well. And then if they want to, they can go to various places, various bookstores, various online locations, um, and they can buy a book, either like an ebook, or they can buy a paperback, or those who are mega rich can buy a hardback, from that perspective. But you're like me, you're a writer. You need somebody to recognize you. You need somebody who is in your court, so to speak, who will, take you further. But of course, it depends on what the writer wants as well. If the writer thinks that he, is going to become rich and famous overnight, forget it. It's not going to happen.
And we
Unless
talked
you're,
about this the last time you were on the show, right?
oh, it's true. If you're with the big 5, then they do all the marketing, they do all the advertising. They're the ones that have got the the basic money and finances to be able to promote you, because you need promotion. And sometimes books appear on television, sometimes they're on radio because people pick them out as book of the week. It's all about marketing. If you have to do your own marketing, when are you going to do your own marketing? If you go to work Monday to Friday, that only leaves you Saturday and Sunday. It's all right. So you want to give up family life on a Saturday and Sunday, do your own marketing. That side of it, that is very difficult. Um, you've also, when you start this process, you really got to appreciate that it's likely that the book that you write is probably never going to make it onto a shelf, from that perspective. And it's also likely that you might give up halfway. You've got to really be determined, and you've really got to understand that what you're doing is going to be a sacrifice, because your family, everybody around you, is your mates and things like that. You're going to have to give time to your project before you realize. And when you do realize, I'm sacrificed 6 months, 9 months, or a year even to do this. And what's my reward at the end of it?
Well, we got some questions that are coming into the studio for you, Myron. So I'd like to get the first one out. The first one's from Russ, and it is, Myron, what first made you become so fascinated with mythology and ancient history?
But that side of it, well, when I saw the mythology side of it, it was basically because of Aphrodite. Aphrodite leads into all the Greek myths. So I started reading about Greek myths and things like that because in many ways you've got to research your subject. And if you research your subject, you get sometimes that kick, which gives you the inspiration to use whatever you find in research to bring that into the book. And, you know, when I first came to Cyprus, I knew nothing about anything in that respect. But I did, know about as I started to read the book, I realized that it's all the culture as well. So there's the food, there's the drink, everything like that to build up into the story, you know. And when you get that going, your characters develop because they become, like, I suppose human is the only way that I can best describe it. But also, there's all the landscapes and that. I mean, Cyprus is very fortunate. I mean, at the moment we're sweating like pigs, but from that perspective, it's very fortunate because it has a climate that almost 330 days of the year it's sunshine. But even in winter, when it's snowing up in the mountains, people could go skiing in the mountains, and in the afternoon they can come down and go water skiing. It's got that sort of volatility that it can benefit you in lots of different ways. And the climate is very good. The status of where we are in the Mediterranean um, has always been, the island has always been sought after. So the legends of like Romans coming here, French coming here, the British coming here, the Turks coming here, all of that adds to the mythology of the island as well. And don't they haven't lost that ancient spirit, if you like. They still they still appreciate the gods and all the various things because you can see it in the museums, you can see it in the temples that are here. Um, I mean, they have a thing called the Tomb of the Kings. Now, the Tomb of the Kings is basically all the kings in Cyprus over the hundreds and hundreds of years are all buried there. Oh, yeah, supposedly buried there, but they're all open tombs, tombs that you can walk around, that sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, it has a variety of everything that it, you as a person coming as a tourist would appreciate, you know.
So,
And
Myron, you've been in a lot of different fields in your lifetime. Your career has included travel, broadcasting, advertising, and writing. How has all those experiences shaped you with your creativity?
yeah, I was fortunate in as much as having the breakthrough with the radio, with the TV on the Ronnies, and having the breakthrough with the radio and doing writing for that aspect. And then, as I say, I was fortunate. I fell into advertising through the travel manager. I was a travel manager at JWT. Of course, JWT were one of the biggest advertising agents in the world. From that perspective, and they heard about me writing for the BBC and things like that. So they approached me and said, "Why don't you try the copy test?" So they used to have a thing called the copy test. I don't think they do it now, but it was 100 years ago or whatever. And it was a way of seeing if you had any original thought. That was it. So I passed the copy test, first time anyone had in 3 years, and I was shifted upstairs to the creative department. And within 10 days, I'd written my first commercial, first TV commercial. Now, the problem that ensued from there was Thompson's is recognized as a TV advertiser, right? They do radio, they do posters and everything else, or they do press, etc. But they're recognized as a TV advertiser. Now, unfortunately, I joined at the worst time in their history because all commercials that were being done by JWT, the ITV people decided to go on strike. Now they went on, this is the first time in their history they went on strike. So I can tell you that I'm bloody unlucky, you know. So they went on strike. The whole TV department had nothing, no way to produce commercials. So you can imagine how much money they lost.
A lot.
And that was the turning point for them. It was for me as well. I lasted about a year, and then they said, oh, we can't keep you on. We're releasing about 12 copywriters anyway. But you know, any other time this wouldn't be happening. It's just happened because of the fact that, you know, we're losing money, and I don't blame them at all. But I walked out of there, and basically I went down the street, and there was a travel agency, and I gave them my CV, and they said, well, when could you start? And I said, where? He said, there's a merchant bank in the city that wants a travel manager. So I said, okay, that sounds like a good idea. So I joined Credit Suisse First Boston, which was a major merchant bank. And I was the manager there for about 3 years. And then again, I got a bit ambitious and I wanted to go somewhere else. Because, you know, I mean, it's like my dad had a job for all his life. He didn't change, you know. But in the 80s, people were swapping jobs right, left, and centre. And probably as they do today, but to a certain extent, that period was very good because you then got into a what they called the something 80s. It was to do with all the money that they earned in that period was significant. You know, I mean, you find people on 6 or 7 zero salaries, you know, from that perspective. And I was fortunate enough to find a job working in Chinatown. I became the manager of a travel agency in Chinatown, and I loved it. It was really good. But along came the tube walking idea. But I'm monopolizing this. You say something.
Well, I'm just listening in and letting you speak because, you know, this is how our last tea time went. You just shared, and then I just jumped in when I felt I needed to jump in. And I'll jump in right now because we just had a question come in from Todd, and it's the BBC experience must have been such an incredible chapter of your career. What did the writing comedian teach you about storytelling?
Again, what was the question?
What did writing comedy teach you about storytelling?
About what?
About storytelling. What did writing comedy teach you about storytelling? Miss Liz's tongue is all twisted today.
Okay. Well, the storytelling aspect is completely different to comedy. Comedy, it depends on what you're actually writing for, the actual program you're writing for. Now, I wrote for, okay, first of all, we were lucky enough, we got on the Two Ronnies. And the Two Ronnies was, at that time, the biggest comedy duo in the UK. I mean, the one series that we were on was actually the Christmas program, which was brilliant because we then had an audience of like 50 million, you know, all wonderful. We didn't get credit at the end of the program, but since then they've gone on to do books and things like that, the two Ronnies and everything else. And my gag when I did it on my own, but with Philip, my co-writer, we went into all the different books and the Ronnie's books, and we're still earning credits for it now. So, you know, it's went for 30 years later. It's ridiculous. Anyway, from
So
there,
Myron, how do we put comedy and storytelling together?
how much comedy?
How do we put comedy and storytelling together?
I suppose, well, my comedy is different to what was basically in that time a lot of sitcoms. You know, the sitcoms were there. My particular comedy was about writing straight lines for comedy programs. So like Roy Hard, um, which was the Hard Lines, and then I did Weekending. Weekending was a really very good show because it was very satirical. But not only that, it was the people that produced it. John Lloyd, who produced the Blackadder series, he was the producer on the Headlines. Griff Rhys Jones, who you probably know very well, um, he was a producer on there. And of course, John and Griff went on to do Not the 9 o'clock News. So we did some bits on the programs there. But again, you've got this dilemma. Do we stick with writing? You know, Phil and I said, well, it's not paying the mortgage. We're not going to get, you know, we're not going to get the mortgage paid. We'll get a few credits and stuff like that. But so we have to go back to what we were doing. We tried keeping the momentum going. I used to run up to the Parish Theatre, do the gags over the weekend and things like that. Give them to anyway. Give them to John Lloyd. John Lloyd would then have a look through, pick out which ones he wants for headlines. He'd go to headlines. I'd go down on the Tuesday to watch the program at lunchtime, back to work in the afternoon. And then on Wednesday, we would then take the script, sorry, Thursday, we would then take the lines that we did for weekendings, take them down. And then on a Friday, I'd go down and watch the show on weekendings. And people like David Jason was just starting out in many ways. I mean, he you know, he's Trotter in Only Fools and Horses. So you can see I was on the periphery, right? But the decision was, what do we do? Do we stick with what we have, or do we just try to keep the momentum going? At one time, they have what's called a writer's circle. So you'd go in and they'd have all the newspapers spread out across the table. And from there, what they would do is they'd pick out an item. That item would then be turned into a gag. So that's how they would build the program. But they'd have specific people like Andy Hamilton, who's brilliant. They'd have him to do the sketches because the program wasn't all just one-liners. It was sketches as well. But Phil and I went different ways. He went to Dick Emery, which was an old-fashioned kind of comedian, but very popular, very popular. And he got some work from Dick Emery, and I was invited by BBC Scotland to write for a new program, which was a kick up the 80s with Tracy Oldman, and I got a sketch on there, which was great because that gave me the opportunity to push my name around a bit more. Um, and that's what you need. You need a break, and but then you need the momentum to keep going. And that break needs to be turned into something that you actually can. How shall I put it? That you can actually profit from. All right. Um, we used to get paid whatever it was for a line or whatever, or 2 lines or a sketch or whatever. But the guys who were official BBC writers, they didn't have that worry, you know. So yeah, I mean, as far as the comedy goes, it's all changed. Everything has changed now. The stand-ups are becoming more and more, um, how shall I put it, controversial.
Yeah.
Whereas the stand-ups that I grew up with, they wouldn't be crude. They were clever, but they wouldn't be crude. Whereas everything these days is 4 letter words and everything like that, and people laugh at it and they think it's funny and all that. If they grow, it's a different generation, and the comedy itself is a different generation.
So,
You know,
Myron, why did you start writing for the young readers?
which the,
Why
sorry,
did you start writing for the young readers? Did you feel that they were missing out on the history or the storytelling? Like, why did you feel to hit that
do,
genre?
do you think that the subject matter that I chose is for young readers? I would say the subject matter itself, because of what the story is about, is not aimed at young readers. I think if you look at it, I think it's probably 15, 16-year-olds if you're talking about young readers. But in the majority of cases, it's about somebody who is interested in mythology, somebody who is interested in learning about the countries, the country itself, the culture, the history behind everything, how everything has developed in terms of how they have not appreciated what they have, and that I read about in a article in the Observer years ago, and people saying that Aphrodite's Rock uh, hasn't hasn't been given, although it's a world thing of tourist attraction, hasn't been given the, how shall I put it, the original idea of Aphrodite's Rock hasn't been given the appreciation that it could bring as a tourist attraction. People go there, they sit at the rock and they go swimming and things like that. But at the end of the day, they do not have a really good um, restaurant, or it's just a cafe, um, which is a real pity, because they have really a tourist magnet, a real tourist magnet. And if they were to adapt and adopt some of the ideas that other people have put forward, and also, look at it from a perspective of it's an investment, because it needs an upgrade. And in the 25 years or whatever I've lived here, nothing has changed. There's
So
no
Myron, we have another question that just came in from Nick, and it is, was there a specific moment during that visit when you knew that story had to be told, like becomes a story?
When does it become a story? That's a very good question. Um, well, in the first instance, if we're talking about Mistress of the Rock, um, in that instance, the story, I write in pictures, Liz. You did from that perspective.
Yeah.
I can't just write words. I have to write in pictures. So each one is like a vignette. And once you see that, you can write the story. So in the first instance, I had a beginning, a middle, and an end. Now the beginning starts really on Highway 80. That is the beginning of the story because that is how Aphrodite comes about in the first instance. Then there's this developing relationship and a crossover between his own family. I'm talking about Richard Cole now, the hero, so to speak. Um, there's a crossover between his own family and his new, shall I say, attraction to the Aphrodite legend and how it compels him to make a decision whether it's him or her or his wife. You know, that's in a nutshell, that's what the story is about. But it's more complex than that because it involves the Greek legends of the past and it involves how Aphrodite controls the narrative. That's from that perspective.
So Myron, are you working on any other books or just the three books that I've got?
Um, could you? Sorry, I'm getting deafer and deafer.
You don't
Well,
have your hearing aids and I do.
yeah, I've got them on, but I can't turn them up anymore. Turn them up anymore, they'll blow.
Yeah, you'll get like the high wind in them. So, so Myron,
That's
out of the three
right.
books, you've written three
Oh,
books that I've gotten. So, do you have any plans of writing any other books?
yeah, I lost you now.
Oh, am I back? Did you? Me and Greece, we just don't get along, I guess. Are you back, Myron?
Internet. Thank you. I know that. Yeah. Sorry. Okay, go on.
There we go. We got you back. There was a bunch of little glitches. I'm telling you, technology, right?
Yeah, I know. Uh, I have I have dreadful dreams about technology. I mean, I've got grandchildren now. My daughter, granddaughter is 3. No, I think she's now 4. Yeah, she's 4. And my grandson, he's just turned 1. So, but I've talked about this with my wife, and basically, what are those kids going to grow up to? I'll tell you a story. I'm not going to mention the school's name, but there's a school which is a very posh school that is not very far away from here. And the kids in the class use not laptops, they use notepads, the writing pads. None of them can write with a pen.
Wow.
They can type. That's all. They can't write with a pen. They can't do, joined up writing as we used to call it. You know, that's disgraceful.
So
How does,
what do we call that? If they're not writing with pens, what do we call that? Tapping?
I've, I've, I've absolutely no idea. I mean, thinking about it, I mean, I think, the computer age has come so quickly, from that perspective, that it's completely, I don't know, changed everybody.
Yeah.
Everywhere you look, everybody's got a mobile phone. Granny's going down the road on their, pushing a bike up. Oh, hello. Can you just give me directions to Asda's, please? Thank you. It's crazy.
It is
Yeah,
scary, isn't it?
it bloody is scary. Yeah, it is. Because
Absolutely.
I feel that I was fortunate in growing up. I had a reasonable education, not over the top, but yeah, I mean, the joy of writing, okay, I'm not necessarily talking about a pen and paper, but the joy of writing.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when you write down an idea or whatever, you type it. You have to type it anyway, from that perspective. But you're not using some fangy, like what's it called? The one where they correct all your whatever you've written, and then somebody else comes along and AI does it. Oh, I'm going to rewrite that for you. Thinking, oh, bloody well, I'm not going to. It's crazy. It's really, really crazy. But that to me is not an original thought. If you've got somebody, it's like they were having a discussion on the marketing company. Is AI going to be useful to you? No, because it doesn't give you an original thought. There's no original thought behind it. You know, you might, okay, you could write a book, sure, but it hasn't got that guts in the way that it's come about, that it's come about. You've given your time, you've given your passion, if you like, to write this story because it's inside you. That doesn't happen with a bloody computer.
So, Myron, we have a question here from Gerald, and it's did your years writing for programs like the Two Roonies change the way you approach dialogue and characters?
Oh, it's a good question. As I said before, comedy sketch writing is not the same as characters, unless you're writing, shall we say, a um, comedy series. If you're writing a comedy series, then you can attach yourself to the characters. But if you're doing just one-liners and things like that, really, there's no characters involved. Um, the Ronnies were brilliant, but they were brilliant because their characters evolved into their sketches. And from that perspective, yes, I can see how it works. Like if you take Blackadder, for example, Blackadder works because of the characters themselves. It's not just one character as Blackadder; it's all the other periphery characters. They make they make the show how it is. So from that perspective, if you're writing a particular theory theme, either you decide that the theme that you're going to write is a short story, a long story, or a book, or whatever, and you build the characters in that particular way. Because if you're writing a book, right, it's different to writing a screenplay because you don't have the time and the say you don't have the time because the director wants you to do certain things within a certain time limit. If, for example, you're making a film, rarely now would you see a film that goes over 2 hours. In that 2 hours, it's all about the action because that's the way that the director wants it. You won't get necessarily depends on what movie it is, but you won't get long soliloquies or whatever in a movie. It's all about the action, and the action is what determines the overall presentation of the theme that you've actually chosen. In the case of a book, you can basically take it from somebody who was born to somebody who ends up dying because you've got all that time within the book to tell the story. See what I mean?
So, Myron, over the years, with all the different types of writing that you've done, like screenwriting, commercial writing, and writing in a book, which one was the hardest for you?
Good question. screenwriting, as far as I was concerned, when I wrote Mistress of the Rock, I wrote the screenplay before I wrote the actual first book, which I gave to Nikki. Um, so that was very good for me because it gave me practice, and then all. I mean, I've suggested this to other people as well. If you write the screenplay and you then develop that into the book or into a book, you've got two products that you can sell. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you take the other way around, just write the book and then hope that somebody will come along and like the screenplay, because that's the normal way of doing things. But in my case, when I wrote the screenplay, when it came to writing the book, all I needed to do was take the major action from the screenplay and pad it, from that point of view. So I could know what the action was going to be, know what the dialogue was going to be. Then I just needed to pad it. I needed to put where the location was and what happens in that location. So yeah, I mean that's one way to do it. The other way is basically sit down, decide you're going to do the book, put it into different chapters if that's the way you want to work, and then work your way through the different chapters until you get to the end of the story. Um, Personally, I write quite quickly, um, and I don't have that pattern. I just write because, as I say, I write in pictures, and those pictures come together. Once those pictures come together, then the chapter's done. Next chapter. That leads into the next chapter. So yeah, I mean, everybody has a different way of doing it, but that's how I do it.
So Myron, do you have any other books that you're working on right now, or is that it?
Um, it's a question I can't answer.
Oh, so keep them on their toes, right? So they don't know if there's one coming or one's not coming.
Um, I can't answer that. No. It's Liz, I have dialysis 3 times a week. Now, I spend 4 hours in the hospital each time, roughly, and I get very bored. So um, I look for different things. There's only so many Netflix things you can watch
Yeah.
before you get bored. So I put myself with this marketing guy, and he has helped me enormously, um, purely because he works with a lot of magazines and things like that, and they want short stories. So whatever the subject matter might be, I'll do a short story, 900 words. So I that has, inspired me a bit, you know, and then it's inspired me to do something else. So that's where I stand at the moment.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Myron. So Myron, is there a final message you'd like to leave all the listeners with today?
Ah, say again.
Is there a final message you would like to leave everybody with today?
Oh, um, if you want to do it, do it. If you decide that it's too much for you, don't start.
Well, I want to thank you, Myron, for joining me on Tea Time. And I want to thank everybody for bouncing around like we did. We always have fun, me and Myron. We start with StreamYard, then we jump over to Zoom, and then we come back, but we always end up completing and having a tea time. So always have a plan B, guys, when you're doing these things, especially when you're doing live shows, have a backup for your audience, because I know my audience always enjoys these different tea times and that. So Myron, thank you for joining me for the second time on Tea Time. Keep me posted with your health. And I'm just a tea away. I'm just going to do a quick recap of what today's tea time was, and we'll be back at 7 p.m. on StreamYard if all goes well. with returning guests as well. With Dr. Catherine Hayes, she'll be joining us at 7 p.m. So thank you again, Myron, for joining me. Thank you to the audience. What a fascinating return to the tea time table we have shared today. Myron, thank you for coming back and continuing the conversation with your creativity, wit, imagination, and remarkable range of experiences. Today reminded us that a storyteller's journey is never really finished. One book leads to another, one mystery opens to the door to another question. One piece of history becomes the seed of a completely different adventure. Through your work as an author, screenwriter, former BBC comedy writer, advertising creativity, and map inventor, and creator of the Cypress Mysteries trilogy, you showed us that creativity grows strongest when we allow different experiences to collide. History meets mythology, comedy meets suspense, research meets imagination, and a map becomes a story. A legend becomes a mystery. An old ideal can suddenly find completely new life. One of today's greatest takeaways is this: creativity does not always come from choosing one path. Sometimes it comes from collecting many paths and discovering where the unexpected meets. As a returning guest, you have also reminded us that no conversation has to be final ones. People evolve, projects grow, ideals change, and sometimes the most interesting question is simply, what happens next? As we close today's tea time, I'd like to leave everyone with this thought. What part of your own story have you dismissed as an unrelated when it may actually be the missing piece of what you are meant to create next? Our past experiences are rarely wasted. Sometimes they simply wait until imagination finds a way to connect them. Myron, thank you for returning, for continuing to share your worlds with us, and for reminding us that curiosity is one of the greatest engines a storyteller can have. Until next time, continue following the mysteries, continue playing with history, and continue serving real-life tea, truth, experience, and awareness, one imaginative adventure at a time. And today's takeaway from Miss Liz is a creative life does not have to fit neatly into one title. Every experience, every curiosity, every strange detour can become part of the story. When we stay open to possibilities, yesterday's interests can become tomorrow's greatest adventures. And thank you all for joining me on Tea Time, and I'll see everybody at 7 p.m. and we'll do this all over again.
Thank you, Liz.